Hi, I'm Joseph Leveque from 3110. I'm French, living in China for 4 years. For the last 4 years and 6 years in total. I'm running a service company, a digital agency here in China, and we are specialists of WeChat, the biggest app, the #1 channel, digital channel here in China. And we help foreign businesses leverage the channel, understand it, and actually implement their strategy for the channel. My #1 tip for realizing your China dream would be to keep an open mind, because you often have a preconceived idea of what you want to do with China and how you want to be part of that enormous, super exciting environment, super fast environment. Keeping an open mind, because you never know what the best opportunity will be, and there are so many opportunities here for motivated people. If you really have the willingness to learn this environment and to be part of the innovation sphere here in China, there are literally thousands of opportunities. You just have to keep an open mind and consider all the options that are brought to you.
So thanks, Joseph, for taking the time.
You're welcome.
I wanted to start with, for people who are watching who might not know who you are or what it is that you do, if you could do a quick self-introduction.
I'm heading a digital agency. So digital agency is a very large world. So we're specializing in certain aspects of the China digital ecosystem, and we specialize in helping mostly multinationals understand the difference, because for a lot of headquarters it's difficult to manage remotely a country that is so far apart from their usual environment, Google, Facebook, and etc. So we're often helping headquarters communicate with the local teams and replace headquarter capacities that locally they don't have. The local team being often marketing and sales. Often they don't have tech management capacity, and the whole digital presence is managed by headquarters. So it's often a big issue, a big pain, especially for the local teams. When they ask a website modification, it has to go through I don't know how many layers of approval, and then it's like 3 months, 6 months. This is China, and the timing in China is the cycles are super short. So it's very crucial for local teams to be as nimble and as agile as possible. So we often are enablers of that, and we play that piece very often. And in terms of specialty, we are specialized in WeChat. It wasn't really a choice on our part in the beginning. It's just that when we started up, we were just like a general digital agency where you're doing everything, app design, websites, pretty much everything that was web related, and building web solutions. And virtually after like just a couple of months, virtually 100% of our clients and prospects were all asking about what can we do with WeChat? How can we leverage that as a channel? How can we integrate our systems with WeChat? So we learned, and we sort of became WeChat specialists. I don't like to use the term WeChat experts, because nobody can be an expert. It's such a huge ecosystem that you can be an expert of a specific part of WeChat, maybe, but I'd rather call ourselves like WeChat specialists.
So I'd like to dig into, like, why did you come to China in the first place? Why China? And then why have you stayed?
Why China? China, the first experience of China was when I was a student. I was studying political science back in France, and at that time I had the choice of doing a year abroad, like very, very classical, and I choose China. So that was 04 and 04 or 05, and I knew pretty much nothing about China, but I was curious, and I was like, okay, this is where things are actually happening. This is the fastest growing country in the planet. So I want to see it for myself. So I went for a year there studying. I was supposed to study the Chinese constitutional law, as I was a political science student, and I ended up learning Mandarin. because that was a lot more useful actually. Then I met my girlfriend at that time, who has become since my wife. She's French. She was part of the same exchange program as I was back in Chongqing, 2004. And then I stayed one more year to learn more Mandarin, and we reached fluency in Mandarin. Then we went back to France for 7 years for different professional reasons. And my wife found a very interesting position back in 2014 here in Shanghai as a lawyer, and because she speaks Chinese, she already knows the country quite well. So we went back to China 4 years ago. And why China? So this is why China, and it's a sort of a virus. Once you've been in China, there's always a sort of a love and hate relationship with the country. Things that are, so amazing, so crazy. It's one of the most exciting places, and things that as a foreigner are wearing you down a little. So it's but you always go back to China. And the time we spent in France, the 7 years we spent in France between our two China times, we came back at least twice, because it's some people call it a virus. It's a ping pong. You always get back to China. All paths leads to China somehow.
How did you come to the place where you started up 3110? Like, how did that process happen? What were you doing before, and then how did you make that decision?
I started my career as a corporate strategy consultant, and like the likes of BCG, McKinsey, etc. But I was working for a very specific kind of consultancy where it's a consultancy that was built by scholars, researchers, and one of the teachers of Polytechnique, which is the equivalent to the French equivalent to MIT. He set up his own shop, and he was consulting with commodity markets, and we were modelizing market equilibriums in the commodities market, so market share and prices. And we were using a software suite for that. And I've always been sort of a geek, very interested in the web, how it works, software, etc. So that was perfect. That was a perfect fit, mixing the business, my business learning in school, and the geek part. And I was very involved in the software, and that got me into software design and how to make it evolve. And I left this company after 5 years because after a while it's always pretty much the same, working for cement again and again, and it's always the same. So I left them to pursue a passion of mine, which is music. So I set up a small music label, a hip-hop music label. I know it's quite a shift, and our strategy was purely online marketing, because in the music industry, everything is about digital, and we were quite successful. So it's a micro label that is only hosting 2 French artists, but the 2 artists I've worked with, when we started working together, they were making minimal wage or like literally nothing, and they're now making a very decent living from their art. I had to quit this project, which is just a side project. As of today, I'm only selling IP, because we moved to China. And when I came here to China, I had the choice between, do I get back to a corporate job, or do I still pursue the entrepreneurial route? So I decided for the entrepreneurial route, and I met the two other co-founders within the first couple of months of landing in Shanghai. 2 other web professionals. I never had my own service business, so I wanted to learn, and I wanted to learn as well the digital ecosystem in China. It was like so fascinating to me that I wanted to do some paid learning, and we set up this shop, and it was quite successful because we're now 15, and we've grown significantly since we set up shop. It was I'll detail the road to where we are now. It hasn't been always very easy, but we're quite proud with what we have achieved.
You're a little bit different than a lot of people I've interviewed in that you came to China to study and then you left.
Yeah.
And then you you came back to work?
Well, actually, my first 6 months of career were in China. I started to work for Lafarge in Beijing as a strategy, as part of the strategy team, and this is where I met the consultancy firm I spent 5 years with. So I was one of the juniors. I was feeding them with data, and then I actually hit off quite well with the consultants, and I spent the first 5 years of my career working with them, actually, when my internship finished with Lafarge.
Interesting. And so before you came to China, then, before you were studying, what were some assumptions that you had about what China was like? And then when you arrived Chongqing, like Chongqing is pretty Chinese, especially back in those days, right? What were some of those assumptions that were challenged? Like, what did you learn about what China's really like on the ground?
Well, I came with a pretty open mind. I didn't have so much. I don't know if it was really intentional on my part, but I didn't research so much. I was like, this is probably one of the countries that is the further apart on the cultural standpoint and language, and that was as far as possible from my culture, being French. So, and I wanted to experience that. And I wanted to understand. Because there was already a lot of coverage at that time. That was almost 14 years ago, and there was already a lot of coverage about China being the next economic dragon, etc., etc. A lot of press coverage, a lot of research about the China being, about to become the world's second economic power. So I wanted to see it for myself. And I didn't have so much preconceived ideas about China, except on the culture, maybe. So I was like, okay, I'm coming with a blank state of mind, and let's get surprised. And I had my fair share of surprises and of discoveries, and it was quite an amazement.
What did you find as some of the main differences working back in France in a consulting firm as opposed to coming here and doing business in China? What would you say are some of the differences in terms of working styles?
Well, the bulk of the differences are between working for a big corporate in a big corporate environment and working for a startup, a small entrepreneurial venue. It's not really attached to being in China or being outside of China for that part. So I mean, big corp is very processed. Where here, as a small venture, you're always a jack of all trades. Wearing so many different hats. But this is not really specific to China. One difference I have experienced is I've started my own business in France, a small business, and I have started this business together with co-founders here in China, and I've seen like huge differences. For example, starting a business in France is quite easy. It's a small scale business is quite easy and it's quite cheap. Starting up a business in China is much more expensive, especially when you're bootstrapped, when you're on a shoestring budget. Starting up a business in China is a much more complicated beast. The number one difference being accounting here. Accounting is on a month-by-month basis, while in France, especially when you're a small-scale business, you have a lot of simplified procedures for declaration of your taxes, etc. So basically, running a small-scale business with very limited transactions, limited number of staff. I mean, the workload of your relation with the administration is quite low, while here. Just the accounting alone is going to cost you, the very minimum entry tickets is like €3,000 a year, 3,000 to 5,000 euro a year, just for the accounting, just for the reporting to the government, make sure that every row in your accounting is declared into the right space, in the right place. While in France, the lowest you could pay for accounting if you have very limited, the cost of existing, what I call the cost of existing as a business, is accounting-wise is like maybe at max €1,000. So this is the number one difference, and another very big difference. So a lot more overhead. Especially the FAPIA, the invoicing here in China is it's actually a burden, and it's so complicated that a lot of people here just avoid it. And the more complicated, the more sophisticated it gets, the more people are avoiding it. I mean, we're always bombed with offers from the shady businesses to issue FAPIAs so that we can put them into our accounting, to purchase FAPIAs, to purchase invoices, because it's hard to get from your suppliers or from freelancers because of the complexity of the whole thing. And so that's the biggest difference of operational wise. And another big difference, obviously, is I do speak and understand Chinese to a certain extent, but all the vocabulary, accounting, relationship with the tax bureau, it's a vocabulary that is so specific, and the procedures, the law that is applicable, it's something that it would take enormous amounts of energy to understand fully, and so everything that you do is secondhand. So one thing that we learned along the way, it's extremely important here in China to have a very good partner who is, the proxy for this, and who is, giving you the right, who's a consultant, who's giving you the right advice. I mean, we set up our business with an agent, and an agent is like a pure executant. They're just like, okay, you want to set up a business, what would you like to do? And they just set up your business license for you. But for example, in our business license, there's light bulbs. There's light bulbs in our business license. We're a tech consulting company. Those kind of things that if you don't know, and you never know unless somebody tells you at the end, oh, did you realize that on your business license, on your business scope, there's lightning? Why? And when I asked afterwards the agent, they were like, oh, I put in the scope a scope as wide as possible, so if you want along the way to change your, what you want to do with your business, then you're not constrained. Yeah, but I mean, the business license is something that is open, and it's anybody can access it. So if I have clients that they're just doing a background check or doing due diligence, I mean, wouldn't that raise flags? So this super important. Find a great, reliable partner for everything related to accounting, to your relationship to the tax bureau, structuring your company, the way it's structured. It's really important to be well counseled. And if you're on a shoestring budget like we are, it's something like you shouldn't disregard. You shouldn't overlook. Definitely.
Looking back over the last 4 years running business here, what would you say have been some of the main challenges that you've run into, and how did you overcome them? Can you give us an example or two?
For us, we're a service business, so our number one challenge is recruiting and keeping our staff, making them happy enough so they stay here. So we're in a business. Digital in China is a crazy place. It's an absolutely crazy place. This is the most advanced country in the world, tech-wise. I mean, in terms of what we have available, the features, the apps, it's the most advanced country on earth. Payment is so advanced. I mean, it's a cashless country already. It's crazy. So, and every business is being disrupted here. Everything is getting digitalized. So there's an enormous competition for digital talents. Enormous. The competition is enormous, and the capacity of training digital talents in China is not falling out. It's definitely not falling out. There's a huge gap, a huge supply and demand gap in terms of digital profiles, all kind of profiles. Not only developers, not only software developers, but the marketers, the digital marketers, the project managers, SEO, any skill set attached to digital is in short supply here. So we're in competition with everybody, and digital talents, where do they go? They go to the .coms, to the BAT. We call them BAT or BATS. This is the first. They're literally sucking up all the new graduates, the fresh grads from the universities, and then you have the BATs. Then you have all the next startups. The hottest, whatever is the hottest field. Like right now, blockchain is sucking up a lot of the talent, and then you have the biggest brands, the Nike, the Starbucks, and you have the 4As, the big agencies, you have the consultancies, and you are, of course, at the very bottom of the pile. So that is by far our number one challenge. And how we haven't found a silver bullet at all. And our solution, if I can call this a solution, is network. By far, number one channel for recruiting is network, like friends of our staff, friends of our friends, events, like showing what we've done at events has been a great channel for recruiting. And in terms of keeping them, because of course we can't pay as much as the craziest salaries as within the startup environment. Of course we can align. So the way we try to keep our staff happy and to keep people people with us is to make sure that they're happy and that they're on a learning track. This is by far what has been the most successful in terms of keeping people happy and motivated, and is to make sure that everybody is on a very clear learning track. Okay, what is that you're going to learn next? What is that you're going to do next? What are you going to add to your skill sets? Hard skills, soft skills. We're still learning that, of course, but in terms of the principle, this is what we're trying to do. That's the number one challenge. Number two, I don't. Let me know if I'm too.
Oh, keep going, yeah, please.
And the number two challenge is it's not really specific to China. Is when you start up a service business, especially. And what we did was probably the worst. I mean, not the worst, but the most difficult road ever. Starting up without a name and without a pre-existing portfolio. I mean, we were not a spin-off of a pre-existing, consultancy business or a different version of what we're doing. We were just starting up from scratch. So this is probably the hardest road you can think of, and we probably didn't really know at that time, or we didn't really fully realize and how hard that would be. And but if you know, or you don't do anything. So we're glad that we've done it. It's I consider this as a like a hands-on MBA. So we started up as rank 2. So we started up as subcontractors for a lot of people in the industry, as expert, like a very narrow expert on certain topics as subcontractors. And about around a year of existence, we started up working with our own brands. So that was the biggest challenge. Because of course being a subcontractor is not always ideal in terms of it's very you have a lot of up and downs in terms of business pipeline, and it's also it's very rushed often. It's very tight timelines, etc. So it's hard work. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just we learned a lot. It was a great experience, but we wanted to shift away from that model, of course, and we're trying to get more and more brands directly, and to turn from spot projects to retainer agreements, where we have a long-term relationship with the client, working on their let's say their loyalty program, making sure that we're working on that continuous improvement of their WeChat. This is a model that is a lot more predictable and a lot more sustainable. I mean, strategically, it was making it is what makes the most sense. But it's a hard and long road. So it's been 3 years, and we're in that turning point right now. So it took us 3 years to do this shift. So if I were to start this over again, now that I have the experience, I would definitely do it differently. I would certainly take a value proposal that is somewhere outside of China and bring it to China, for example, or I would probably start a spin-off, like open the office for a big consultancy or a big service firm here in China, or at least benefit from the support of all the pre-existing material, brand awareness, marketing materials, and then have a first set of prospects from the existing portfolio of the firm. That would be a much easier road, definitely.
So you came here to learn Chinese first. Well, you kind of came to study something else, but ended up learning Chinese.
Exactly.
How valuable have you found your ability to speak Chinese and running business here? And how important do you think is understanding both the language and the culture?
I would say it's almost mandatory. To a certain extent, you don't necessarily have to speak like perfect Chinese or even very fluent Chinese, but an understanding of the culture, the mindsets, the work culture as well is very, very important. So it's almost mandatory. It's almost mandatory if you wanna occupy a management role. At a certain point, it's mandatory. Maybe at very, very top level, and you have enough people to be the proxy that you can rely on, that you can trust. But any mid-management position or any like entrepreneur venture, if you don't have a minimum command of Chinese, it's going to be very, very hard. Unless you're offering a very, very narrow, like surgical niche value proposal, and you have very little competition, and being a foreigner not speaking any Chinese is fine, because there's a spontaneous demand for what you're doing, or it's easy to sell. Other than that, it's having a minimal understanding is absolutely mandatory. That's the way I'm seeing it. It's really you have to.
And how important would you say is spending time on the ground here, actually being in China?
It's you have to as well. You have to, especially in what we're doing. You have to, because our environment, the digital channels we're working with, have no equivalent outside of China and have very limited penetration outside of China. So if you're working on WeChat, Weibo, Douyin, okay, Douyin is now getting abroad with as TikTok, etc. But for the vast majority of the channels you're working with, they only are here in China. So if you're not in China, your understanding will be at best secondhand. And there's no way you're going to be as efficient as being here on the ground. There is no way.
And so, even being here on the ground, one of the things I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs here is like the speed of business.
Yeah.
Like how quickly things change. How fast you have to adapt. How do you personally keep up with the speed of business here in China?
It's my full-time job, and it's a challenge. This is why I don't say, I used to say WeChat Expert, like WeChat Expert, but I just say WeChat Specialist now, because it's just like, it's my full-time job, and I'm not able to keep up entirely with everything new with the platform, with the features, with the best practices and clever ways of using it. I just can't. So I'm trying to have an understanding that is as broad as possible, but it's just it's hard work. To be honest, it's hard work. You have to plug into the best shortcut is to identify the best curation channels, people, media that can help you have your fingers on the pulse of what's happening, and it takes time. You have people, and actually what you did on LinkedIn a while ago is a great shortcut, because I guess you were filling a gap. Nobody has done this identification work of creators before you did. So this is exactly what I'm mentioning. So what I'm talking about is identifying enough high authority sources on the different silos, because the digital environment in China is all silos. BATS, they're all silos. So the Alibaba environment and all the sub-silos of the Alibaba environment. So payments, e-commerce, so the e-tailers, the Tmall side, the Taobao side, the TPs, etc., etc. So all those layers, you have to identify high authority sources that are doing a constant job of creating and keeping up with what's happening, and just plug into those sources. This is what I'm doing, and I actually chose to cut myself from some of these sources, because I mean right now keeping my fingers of everything what's happening with Douyin is not of high value to me, because we're at 3110, since we have such a strong focus on WeChat, this is very marginal. and it's distracting us. It's distracting us away from our core focus. So some of these, it's enough to have a high level understanding, knowing the big changes. If there's they opened a new advertising platform, this is something I want to know. But for like the big campaigns, the raising KOLs, I don't need to know this. So it's a work of identifying those sources, and it's also a work of carefully selecting them so you don't drown, you don't to cut through the noise.
I wanted to get a bit of your idea around not being a WeChat expert, but as a specialist, trying to understand for people who are outside China, haven't maybe been on the ground here, or maybe even people who are here who are not in the tech scene. What's different about the tech ecosystem in China as opposed to the West? And then specifically with WeChat, like what sort of a beast is it?
So what's different with the tech ecosystem between China and the rest of the world? It's easy. It's apart. It's completely apart. Every channel you can think of in the West has a Chinese equivalent, and there are a lot of channels in China that have no equivalent in the West. There are very, very little channels that you could directly transpose to China. LinkedIn has a presence in China. It's marginal. It's very small. The penetration of LinkedIn is super small in China. So every channel you would have to learn the Chinese equivalent. Then tech-wise, the tech stack, the technologies, they're pretty much the same. The thing is, most of the learning you do as a software developer, as a project manager, are from those meta platforms in the West, Stack Overflow, GitHub especially, and some of these are actually blocked. So, and especially when you're doing software, you rely a lot. You stand on the shoulders of giants, right? You rely a lot on the community and what people have built prior. So, the tech space, the tech community in China has drifted away from the general worldwide community a bit on certain technology stacks, because the country is big enough so that they can sort of run on their own. And a lot of tech stacks are China specific because the bulk of the community anyway is here. They're not using GitHub. They're using equivalents, and same for conversational spaces and learning spaces are specific to China. So as a digital hands-on person, like project manager, software, CTO, lead tech, there's a lot of learning that you would have to do to be fully proficient here in China. That's for the tech part. And for WeChat, what was the question about WeChat?
What kind of beast is it?
What kind of beast is WeChat? Wow, that's I mean, I like to say WeChat is the home screen of the Chinese internet. WeChat is the first screen. WeChat would be, if we were to make a phone operating system today, this is what a phone operating system would look like. WeChat, I mean, a lot of people are actually wondering why WeChat didn't try to turn into a fully blown operating system for a phone. It's just that we believe that they have strategic agreements with a lot of the phone makers that they would be stepping on their toes, and this is not something that they want. It's just it's strategically, but from a user experience standpoint, probably if Tencent made an operating system, it would be a much better experience than what we have, either on Android or on the iOS side. Actually, I do believe that they would do a better job.
And so, for people who are trying to understand, I think even people here in China sometimes we don't fully utilize the full extent of WeChat. Right?
Yep.
It's
Nobody does.
It was a messaging platform,
Yep.
And then it turned into so many other things.
Yep.
And now it's I don't even know how to use it properly.
It turned into your home screen. It has replaced your browser. It has replaced your SMS. It has replaced your emails. It has replaced your payments for the most part. It has replaced the way your loyalty programs and those loyalty cards that you had in your wallet. There are so many aspects of your life that WeChat has got into by capillarity that it's. I mean, the best summary is it's a home screen for the Chinese internet. Out of the 200 minutes we are spending on our mobile phones a day here in China, 70 minutes belong to WeChat alone. So as a business, there are so many aspects of WeChat that can be leveraged. not only the official accounts that are the mini sites that are like WeChat mini sites for businesses. There are so much more. There are built-in loyalty programs. There are the Wi-Fi, the mini programs that are a sort of replacement for applications. It's so wide that my best summary is just it's the home screen of China.
So looking forward here a bit over the next few years, if people are looking to sort of start up their own thing or create something that will be able to actually work, what would you say are some of the untapped opportunities that still exist here in China from your perspective?
Untapped opportunities. China is super far ahead in so many tech aspects, and I mean, as foreigners, we can actively participate into this, but we don't really have a competitive edge, to be honest. We're either spectators of this, and we try to figure that out, and we try to make sense of it. We try to actively participate, but I'm not sure we really have a competitive edge, unless, except in certain sectors, artificial intelligence, China has the edge on certain aspects, but not on others. Same for blockchain. I mean, this is like vertical by vertical then. There's an aspect in China that is still, in my opinion, lagging a lot. It's marketing. Marketing in China is still throwing a lot of money into media, at the wall, and see what sticks. So because for a lot of reasons. For competition reasons, any sector, any startup sector in China is super competitive. As soon as there's one winning case, you have a lot of Me Too's. You have one big deal, let's say second-hand car platforms. One big deal, the leader being acquired by B, A, or T, bam, you're gonna have 6, 7, 10 Me Too's raising money and throwing that money into ads, billboards, everything. So this is a very common situation. And so for me, there's an enormous opportunity in the whole MarTech, the whole marketing technology, marketing automation, and improving marketing efficiency. Because right now it's still very early stage in China. So my forecast is this is something China, of course, will bridge that gap. It's just a matter of time. But we can play a role as foreigners. We have a call to play here because there's so much learning that we have made in the West. There's so much sophistication in the MarTech space in the West that we could apply here in China. And here, if you look at WeChat, for example, I mean, we've screened the top 100 brands in China. We have followed every single of their WeChat account last year to see how much marketing automation they were doing. Like how many of these brands were trying to learn about us, new followers, like trying to put us into a bucket. Like, are we prospects? Are they trying to identify us as existing customers? How sophisticated? Are there any drips? Are there any automated interaction? Only 30% of the brands we have surveyed. And we're talking about the top 100 brands in terms of brand awareness, brand equity here in China, the top budgets in China. While in the West, of course, you would have a very, very different picture. So this is what I'm specifically talking about. I think there is a huge gap, a huge opportunity, and anybody who can help bring some of those sectors to speed can build. We have a competitive. I believe we have a competitive advantage in certain areas. But as they were saying, it's going to be very fast, and whenever there's something that is successful, you have a lot of local equivalents popping up. It's just a matter of time. If
you can think back to sort of the first time you started here in China a few years ago, and where you were, what kind of space you were in some ways you had an advantage because you already had the language, you had a bit of work experience here. But if someone is starting from scratch today in China, what advice would you have for them? Where do they start?
Where do they start? It really depends. would that be somebody who has entrepreneurial plans, or just somebody starting out in China and wanted to be part of that whole China as an employee, as a corporate job?
At two groups of people. One is people who are outside China who haven't even gotten in yet.
Yeah.
And you can let them know whether they should start, as an entrepreneur or working or whatever. And then for the second group of people, it's people who are already here working, but maybe thinking of branching out and doing their own thing.
For people who haven't been in China yet, my advice would be to learn as much as they can about the specificities of the Chinese environment, and to get up to speed as fast as possible, and to get a good command of how fast China is, and the super short iteration cycles of innovation in China. Once they have that command, it's going to be much easier. For somebody who would be starting up in China, it's so much easier. It's so much easier if you can start up with a Chinese partner. I know it's been probably said over and over again, but it speeds up so many things, and it's and somebody who's understanding all the layers of setting up a business, running it, the difficulties of and just one aspect, financing. As a foreign entrepreneur, you don't have access to financing here. So having the options you have available are super very, very limited. So having a Chinese partner is a key to basically have access to financing. That's and of course somebody you can trust, because a Chinese partner has a lot of power to your venture. So somebody you can trust is of course of utmost importance, I would say.
So how would you say is the best way to build relationships with local Chinese people here? We hear a lot about guanxi, right? What does that actually mean, and how do you build relationships with Chinese people?
Well, there's no silver bullet at all. I'm not sure that guanxi aspect is so specific to China, because I've been setting up my own business in France and setting up my business here in China. I've been through the same process of slowly, gradually building up a network of partners, of people of influencers, authorities in your field, in your vertical. I'm not sure China is very different in that aspect, except for the pure cultural aspects. The pure cultural aspects of the notion of face, the notion of how you handle people relationship. But here, what I would share is nothing different from anybody who's sharing about cultural differences and how to do business in China. So I have a limited experience, I think, but from those two ventures, small-scale businesses starting from the ground up, started from scratch, I didn't feel that there was a huge gap between doing this in France and in China, except of course the language barrier, and but identifying. Of course, as a foreigner, you would get along a lot better with foreign educated Chinese, so Chinese who went abroad, who have a good command of your culture or Western cultures in general. That's obviously that's obviously a common ground, but we've been able to build good business relationships with Chinese who've never been abroad. So it's not mandatory. It just speeds up. It's easier. It's easier, I would say. And if I may just finish about this, there's a question as a service provider. It's a question I'm often having from prospects, and today, virtually 100% of our interfaces on the client side are Chinese, and they're all often asking us, okay, as a service provider, as a foreign service provider, what do you have that a purely local company doesn't have? Why would I work with you? And it's a very, very common question. So, and we often answer that our competitive advantage is that we have a much broader exposure. We've worked abroad, we've worked in China, we have a command of both. And we are capable of drawing the best practices from the Chinese side, drawing the best practices from the Western side, and make an optimum mix of the two. That's our competitive advantage. I mean, if you look at innovation in China, often you have an innovative model brought up, but a lot of Me Too's around, and they're all like clones, copy-paste. Of course, it's from the investor side, it's a way of limiting their risk. You have a proven model, so copy-paste is limiting your risk, but at the end, it's destroying value. And by adapting and improving and iterating on existing proven model, often you create more value, and this is something we can do, and this is something we're really good at.
So if people are looking to find out more about your work, what it is that you do, what's the best place online to find you and reach out? And then what kind of people will be reaching out to you?
Us, the company, I mean, our website and our online channels are the best way to reach us. So our website, obviously, and individually our team members on LinkedIn, for example. Our number one channel is today is still LinkedIn, because our clients are often multinationals, and and LinkedIn is the common ground. It's a common channel between the headquarter teams and the local teams. So it's still our primary channel. So this is the best channel to interact with me and learn from me, and this is where I'm sharing the most. But also connecting personally with me on WeChat is also a preferred channel, and following whatever I'm sharing on my moments, and of course following your WeChat account. If you're in China or outside of China and using WeChat, following your WeChat account is a great way of keeping staying up to date with whatever we're doing.
And what kind of people might reach out to you?
What people? So. We have a couple key personas for what we're doing. Digital heads, for example, APAC digital heads or global digital heads, that they're trying to improve the efficiency of running operations between headquarters or other countries or the whole region and China, and trying to smooth out the differences between the ecosystems. So this is a great type of profile we can help. Another profile we can help a lot are obviously digital marketing managers, because there are so many aspects of the stack that they have to manage. It's a struggle. It's a constant struggle for them. So we can take off a lot of that load from them. Digital marketing managers and heads of what's called ventures, digital ventures. So every company has a different name for that, and not every corporate has set up such a capacity. But often corporates now inject their digital management capacity into a specific venture often under marketing, or sometimes directly under the COO, under operations, that is managing the website, that is managing the WeChat, the online channels, like technically how they're set up, the whole tech stack, how it's interacting with the CRM, etc. So this is a good. This is also a very good profile. A profile we can help. We can definitely help. Same with CIOs, chief information officers, CDOs, and anybody who wants to understand the key points, the key aspects that that a business needs to be considering when operating in China. So that the key aspects that should not be left out of the picture for the whole stack, the whole marketing stack, and all the layers: the attraction layer, how they attract people, how they build traffic; the conversion layer, of course, and after the conversion layer, how they're servicing their customers. So anybody involved into building that picture, that puzzle, and optimizing that puzzle, we can help. So it goes a lot of different titles, a lot of different names for that, depending on the corporate. But specifically, the role in charge of this is the people who can help the most.
Thanks, Joseph. Appreciate the time.